Super Cool Radio.
Hello, everyone. I am Matthew Thomas, coming at you live here on Facebook and Twitter. You're, of course, watching Super Cool Radio, doing a very cool live interview. Got a great guest with me at this time. We'll be going on tour with Modern Minds as part of the Down and Dead tour coming up on September 21st. Please welcome Z from the high octane metal band from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, known as Reign of Z. Thank you so much for hanging out with me.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for taking an interest. I appreciate it.
Of course. I first heard of Reign of Z. I think you guys went on tour, I want to say, with Comey Christ and my friend's Heartsick. I believe that was end of last year, I want to say.
Yeah, 2021, September into October of 2021. King 810 was also partially on that tour as well. So yeah, we did the first leg of the tour.
Right on. That's when I first got introduced to you guys. And of course, obviously listen to the music. And now, of course, I'm chatting with you right now. So that's really awesome. Now, before we really get into everything, obviously heard you guys work on a new music video. We have the upcoming tour with Modern Mimes. But I kind of want to start at the beginning. So for Reign of Z, how did you guys come together as a band and come up with the name?
Every time everybody asks me about the name of the band, I wish I could come up with this like very ethereal, like prolific story. And maybe one day I will do that to a host, but I will not do that to you because you deserve the truth. So
I appreciate it.
So decades and decades ago, no, actually, I think it's going on 6 years if I'm not mistaken. So my dog has a little bit of a fan base. I want to kind of say that she's probably more popular than I am. Understandably so, because I can't compete with that. Her name is Rain. And just to give like a little backstory, I was in touring bands before regionally. And I went out and had a meeting in LA with Frankie, who was the ex-bass player of New Year's Day. And I sat down with him and he was like, hey, you should really name, the band Zosha. And I was like, I don't like that. I'm very awkward. And I really, despite what may people think or feel, I really don't like the spotlight on me. I like a band as like a collaborative effort. And I was like, I don't like that. So Berg, who actually unfortunately cannot be on this podcast because he has to work late, he was like, well, everybody likes your dog, so why don't we just name the band Reign of Z? And literally that was it. I was like, okay. And it just stuck and everybody liked it. So I wish I could give you some story about like kings and queens and all this like crazy stuff, but it's not. It's literally me and my dog.
That's actually the first time. I do ask that question a lot. First time someone said that's named after a dog. I did have one that was named after a paper towel company, so I did have that.
I mean, that's pretty cool, and I would like to meet that band because that's pretty awesome.
I'm not sure if they're still they're workhorse. I don't know. They were very popular like the late 90s, early 2000s.
Okay.
And then they came back. They did like a reunion kind of like for a year. I'm not sure if they're still active or not.
But that's awesome. So that's basically how the name was born. Berg, who is, I always joke and say he's like the CEO of Reign of Z. He was the smartass that came up with the name, and he is a smartass. And when he is, it bites him in the butt. So what did we learn? And
It's a very valuable lesson to learn.
And we've been together, I think I want to say 6 years. Obviously, with any band comes, different lineup changes. Berg and I are the only original members left in Reign of Z, but we birthed, I believe, about 6 years ago, and currently where I was living, I was really frustrated with people not wanting to do music, which from then I've grown and evolved and realized that this is a very difficult industry and not everybody's meant to do this, and that's okay. Back then I was a totally different person. I was like, I don't understand, why doesn't anybody want to go fuck up their life and get into debt?
When you phrase it like that, it sounds like a great time.
Yeah, it sounds like it's a solid plan. But we can definitely jump on that topic later in the podcast if you want to. But
I think we got to ease into that.
I know I'm giving a lot to people initially, like, welcome to me. I'm like, boom. Berg always says I'm like a hurricane, literally. But what I've realized over the years, that like people are going to come and go. You just got to let people have their own journey and decide what's best for them. So as of right now, it's Berg and I. We just got our forever home drummer. He lives in Kansas City. His name is Eric. He's awesome. He's hilarious. He's been in touring bands forever. That's a whole nother story, how we accumulated him. And for this upcoming tour, we have Grayson coming aboard, and he's potentially moving into being a permanent member. As of right now, he's filling in. So it's been kind of a wild ride getting into this.
Well, it definitely sounds like, and I know as you kind of touched on like the music industry and stuff, and it is you have to be very like flexible and fluid with everything, because there's just as you know, there's just so much stuff that can come up very like unexpectedly, and like things change, especially like probably since 2020, everything just seems like it's not as like solid or like set in stone as like before everything, because things can change like on a dime.
Absolutely. And I think with the music industry, as soon as you think it like goes completely left, and you're like, wait a minute, I thought we got this formula down, and things are so different now. It's all about going viral and how many likes you have, which I have a whole tangent about likes and stuff like that. But once again, I'm not trying to like scare everybody off, but I have a whole tangent about that.
At least
But,
not
like,
yet.
not yet. But it's ever changing, which I think is why I love it so much, because you can't never go stagnant, because you're always learning. But on the flip side, it's almost trying to catch like a microscopic bug in a jar, because you don't know what you're going to be getting into.
I definitely agree, and I know I'm not like directly in the music industry. Like obviously, I have a podcast based on musicians and music, but even with like just podcasting, and it's probably very similar for music as well. There is just so much stuff to learn, and there's like no set way to learn stuff. Everyone kind of just goes at their own pace and learns stuff differently, and sometimes you get good advice, bad advice, or just no advice. But there's just so much out there. And obviously with social media and the likes, but also with the inflated likes and the fake likes and the bots, and there's just so much weird stuff, especially like when you get into social media and just online in general.
Well, and I think too, like as far as like the likes, because I have friends that have bought their likes, and that's their choice and that's their right. But I think people who know how those things work can start to see through that, if that makes any sense. So people will go to their engagement and be like, oh, okay, you have 50,000 likes, but only 5 people liked your post. I see what you're doing here. And I get why people do it. Berg and I have had the conversation about buying likes. And I know I always say this, like online, as far as like our numbers, they're not, quote, impressive. But on the flip side, and this is going to go into like my whole likes tangent, I've seen bands sell out venues with under 5,000 likes. And then I've played with bands who have over 25,000 likes that can't fill up a venue, let alone get 20 people, on a Tuesday night. And I'm not talking negatively. I'm just trying to bring awareness to people that it's not what necessarily they think it is. I mean, obviously mine's like, if you're Metallica, then yeah, obviously you're going to have a million likes, but that's kind of what I'm trying to explain to people who are like, oh, we've been together 6 years. Why don't you guys have more likes? And I'm like, I don't know, but we sold out, our CD release party that we played for, you know what I mean? So it's kind of this weird like purgatory phase.
No, I think it's definitely interesting. I know this might sound contrary, like, because almost everything I do is, almost purely online based. Obviously, I have, obviously I go to in-person, interviews and events and stuff, but like the online stuff, I think people put a lot of focus on that. And to me, it should be about like playing the shows. If you get people to come out to shows and if you sell out venues and stuff, then I think you're doing the job correctly of how to get people to come out. Cause that is very important. You have a bunch of likes, but if no one shows up to your shows, it just doesn't exactly work out very well.
No, it's weird because we've played for like national headliners. I mean, people with hundreds of thousands of likes that we put more butts in the seats than they did. And that's not to talk crap on them or negatively, but I know a lot of bands on our level or maybe even lower could probably speak on the same vein. And it's kind of a weird position to be in because a lot of like big industry people put a lot of focus on that. And I think that's kind of where I start to get frustrated with the music industry because I'm like, listen, it's not about this online thing because you and I both know, and I'm sure behind closed doors, everybody has had those conversations. It's not real. It's not real. A lot of it's not real. And, a couple of my friends are influencers and they tell me like a lot of their life online is like not, and I won't say who, but a lot of their life is not real.
No, I was kind of leading into that. You
I know I'm gonna
you
get
said
in
it
trouble.
outright, which is fine. But that's what I was leading into and saying. It is kind of interesting, like if you see like some influencer like videos, and it shows like it's perfectly lit. They got the camera in the right spot, and they're supposed to be like, I don't know, making breakfast or doing like routine stuff. But like you can tell, it's like I don't think this is exactly how you do this with this nice lighting and the clothes they wear and that kind of stuff. And not to, again, I'm not speaking of anyone who does that. If you make money and you like doing it,
great,
good for you. Like I'm happy for you. But for outside people who are like looking, like especially like Spotify numbers, I think that that's a big focus nowadays is how many monthly listeners you have and that kind of stuff. It's just, I think it's focusing a lot on stuff that like the intangible stuff that's like purely online instead of looking at how they perform live at the show or how many people do they have at the show. And I think to me, and again, not just my opinion, I have really no expertise in like that kind of area, but to me, I think that would be the thing to focus on.
absolutely. And you, I mean, you as a consumer have, I think, much validity as somebody who, like myself, goes out and performs. Like you're consuming live music and you can pick up on it. And it sucks, like, not to sound like a quote old person, but it sucks that we're not in the age of like the 70s and the 80s where like scouts would actually come out to a show and see like a genuinely talented band, that there's so much. And I feel like people are going to take this as like I'm talking crap on the internet. The internet is, and platforms are wonderful things for bands on so many levels, like and I just want to shed some light so people don't think I'm being a hater or I sound bitter or whatever, because I'm not. Like we've been able to connect all over the world. Like when we got our Spotify last year, like we're really big in Russia, so that's super cool. Like I think there's a lot of wonderful things. I just think I see so many of my colleagues and even local bands like that open for us on tour that suffer because promoters or like big people in bigger positions go, well, they only have 500 likes. Well, they brought more people than the headliner. So maybe, I don't know. I'm just trying to create eye-opening conversations for bands and promoters, and even just people who decide to take a listen to this at a later date, just to get people thinking and start the conversation.
No, definitely. And again, for like the conversation that we're having, I think it's great to actually have conversations like these. I know to some people we'll probably come off as complaining online, which
Sure.
that's fine.
Sure.
Of course people will do that. But I think that we're having a nice conversation. Again, I don't have any solutions or answers or anything to this, but it's at least nice to have a conversation. Maybe that sparks another conversation with somebody else, who then sparks a conversation with somebody else. I think as time progresses, maybe things will change. Maybe, obviously, to me, I think the focus should be more on the live shows, because I've listened to bands, and then there's sometimes I see them live, and it's like just not, it's not the same. Either they don't sound as good, or they had a lot of pieces that they can't produce live, and to me, it takes away a little bit. That's why I like focusing more on the live show than the studio. But that's just my opinion.
No, and I think it's a great opinion because, we obviously go to live concerts all the time. We obviously go on tour and we hear the same thing night after night. And like, I've been on tour with bands who dial their vocals in, I'm not throwing shade. That's just their choice. And I've, been on tours with bands that sing live every night. And me as an observer and a consumer, I understand both sides of the coin. But on the flip side of things, when I'm trying to encourage audiences, is like the whole point of the live experience is to kind of recreate that. I hate to say, like, that spark, or you've never seen a band before. So it's like titillating, to see this new entity and to see how they deliver, because I've seen many concerts over the years where I've seen somebody live and I compare it to like, Joyless Sex. You're just kind of like, oh, okay. I could just go listen to the CD. Oh, okay. And listen, counter argument. We all have bad nights. I've had bad shows. People we've toured with have had bad shows. It's going to happen. You're not going to give a good show every night, but I struggle with that too, because I think live is so telling of the artist, the band, the performance, or whatever. So I think I agree with you on that. We're not complaining.
No, I think it's more observations and obviously our personal preferences, because we're still in our respective industries, even though they are very closely tied together. Obviously when I go to shows, I used to talk to bands like before the shows, but now I like to see them perform and then talk to them after the show. Because you never know until you see a band live how it's gonna, how they're gonna sound, how things are gonna go. Maybe it's gonna be mind blowing, and I have a lot of great things to say. It has happened quite a few times when I've gone to, like shows in my area, or if I'm unfamiliar with a few bands, they've like blown me away just how good they are. So I think it's important. Obviously, the numbers and everything, they are important. Obviously, record labels, management company, everyone, they do focus on that, but also there should be a focus on the live element and how good do you sound live, and touring schedules, all that kind of stuff.
No, I think that's great. And you probably have a super hard job, because if you go and see a band that you don't like, I'm like, oh God, how would that interview go afterwards, where you're like, hey, you guys gave it your best.
Yeah. Obviously, you have to get creative with some language. Is what I usually have to do. But again, you work through it. Always be a professional, as I always am. So you get through it.
Absolutely. But to be a fly in your mind, because I always go into like my little psychoses in my brain, and I'm like, God, are they being genuine, or like, are they just, giving me fluff? But I feel like that's just a stereotypical artist, where they're like, do they really like me, or are they lying to me? Like, it's this whole paranoia thing. Like it's yeah. Once again, whole nother conversation.
I would just say this. We don't have to go into the whole conversation about this, but I feel the same thing, especially like if someone sees me in a concert, go, "Oh, you're a really great interview with whatever band." I'm always nice, like, "Oh, thank you for watching," that kind of stuff. But there is a part of my mind going, "Did they actually watch this or not?"
That's when you have to ask them, like, "Oh, so in 20 minutes and 32 seconds, do you remember when I talked about?" No, just kidding.
Or some of my favorites are like when someone like says, "Oh, you did a great interview with this band," and I have to like think about when I did that interview or like when
Right?
I've done like 240 interviews, so I have to like think and like go through my mind and go, when was that? How did that go? I go, and usually I just go, "Oh yeah, it was really awesome," because I can't think of it right away.
No, it's so true, and I feel so bad. Like, it's kind of the same thing, like when we tour from city to city, and I see the same faces, and I can't remember their fucking names. And it's not because I don't love every single one of you that comes to the show, because I do, but my memory has been garbage, truly, since I've had COVID, which is like a total. I'm like on memory supplements. Like, I try to do Sudoku. Like, get my brain back. Like, I feel so bad, and I always have to tell people it's not that you're not memorable. Like, I'm literally just blanking because you meet so many awesome people in different cities, and it's so hard to keep track. I told Berg, I was like, we need flashcards with like their faces on it, so I can be like, okay, we're in North Carolina. Do, 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 do. Okay. These are the people that are going to be here, and I always feel so incredibly bad, but it's not because I don't love them. It's because I have COVID brain.
No, I totally feel it. I went to a few times. I went to the Black Circle in India. I believe you guys played there a few months ago. Really cool venue. Love the pinball
Beautiful
machine.
venue.
Love the aesthetic, all of that, and all the VHS tapes. Love it. But I went there a few times to see a few different bands, and I like the second time I went there, I talked to this one gentleman. He was really cool. We're talking about music, had a nice conversation, and then I go back there. It was like a month, maybe 6 weeks later, and he walks up to me and starts talking to me, and I was like, "Do I know this guy?" It's like, and then he's like, "Yeah, we met at the last show." Oh, that's right. Yes, I totally remember that. I felt so bad just because like I couldn't remember. I kind of looked familiar, but I was like trying to place where he was, and I just couldn't right away. So I felt bad about that.
I always feel bad about it too, but I try to just be honest with people. I don't know, like in a crazy, like deceitful, messed up industry like the music industry. I always tell people, I'm like, you know what? I'm so sorry. I know that we've met before, but I'm having a hard time placing your name. Can you please just tell me? And 9 out of 10 times they'll be pretty cool about it. And I always just try to say it's not because you're not memorable. I just have the brain of a peanut right now. So please, please just go with me on this journey. So yeah, especially you meet so many different bands. I'm sure it's hard for you to even keep track of the bands you interview.
I'm pretty decent with the bands. It's usually like just the people I meet at the shows. Like some people, like they'll give me like sometimes if they're in like a industry or something, they'll give me a card. So usually that helps me. But yeah, I meet so many people at shows, especially if I cover a festival or something. You meet so many people in like a short amount of time, as you know. So yeah, and I try to keep, but flashcards are probably good. Oh, we're going to this area. All right, I'm going to see this person, and this person. I might have to start doing that too.
I mean, I think I'm going to have to start doing it for this tour because I've had people hit me up on Facebook like, hey, I'm going to be at this place. And I'm like, okay, I have to. And here's the thing, and you know this, people online are not always the way that they look in person. And that's not throwing shade. It's because a lot of us can't walk around with a permanent filter over our face, which I'm guilty. I use them as well. I'm no saint in this situation. But a lot of times I'll look at somebody and be like, and then I'm like, oh my God, their profile picture looks nothing like them. I'm not throwing shade. I do the filter thing too. So I totally get it. But that gets a little challenging too when they don't, or their Facebook profile picture is a tree. And they're like, we're friends on Facebook. I'm like, I'm friends with the tree? Like, but you're not a tree. I don't understand. So
that'd be wild if you were.
That'd be pretty sick. I hope that happens now. I hope somebody please come on tour and dress as a tree so I can take a picture and send it to Matthew so he can post it on his page because I feel like this needs to happen now.
I think somebody will now, but since we are talking about tour, I will mention one thing. I try to look how I look on my profile picture. I'm sweaty right now because I was just drinking hot tea out of my Batman mug. Of course, you know, the proper mug to drink tea out of.
That's right.
Because I did an interview yesterday and my voice started going out, so I've been drinking hot tea and having cough drops today. So I'm about like 95% today, so I feel pretty good.
Eat apples.
Is that
a thing? Yeah. So apples are a natural like anti-inflammatory. So so weird fact about me. So in Pittsburgh, there's something called the UPMC Voice Center, and shout out to Dr. Libby Smith, but they've actually been studying my voice for years because I have never, knock on wood, I have never hemorrhaged, I've never lost my voice, and I've never gone coarse like through a tour. And okay, once again, I'm not trying to be like, who, look at me, like, you know, but most metal and rock vocalists are not treated very well when they go to voice doctors because they're like, oh, you sing that gritty stuff. And I'm like, actually, I'm classically trained, which I know stereotypical in the genre as well, but I actually am classically trained. And they scope me every year and make me scream into a microphone and stare at my vocal cords, which is super cool. But they said, you know, if you start to feel hoarse, to eat apples. It's a natural like anti-inflammatory. As a matter of fact, the last tour that we were on, one of the vocalists was having issues. I won't say who, but I told the individual, I said, eat apples. Here's some vocal cough drops. Shut up. So I like try to help people, but I'm like, I never want to like overstep with a vocalist either and think that like I'm trying to tell them the business either, you know?
That is really cool.
I threw a lot. I'm sorry. I was gonna say I threw a lot at you, and I'm sorry.
Oh, you're fine. There's a lot to unpack, so I was trying to start where you're talking about with studying your voice, which I think that is really cool. Actually, first person I've interviewed we've actually this topic has come up. I think that's very cool. So how did you start doing that, or how did you get involved with that?
So weird story because my life is anything but not weird. I was actually hit by a drunk driver. I want to say 2012, and I hit the windshield, and I noticed that I screamed so loud that I felt like almost like a switch in my voice. Not negative, not positive, just different. So I went to my primary doctor and they said, well, why don't you go to the voice center in Pittsburgh? And I didn't know this, but I guess a lot of like famous people have gone through the voice center and their photos are actually on the wall. Like Lacey from Flyleaf was at the voice center. There's been like a lot of famous like rock stars that have gone through there because we have like top vocal doctors there. And I went in there and they scoped me and they said, you have a blood vessel on your vocal cord, but it's nothing to worry about. And me being the super hypochondriac, paranoid person, I'm like, oh my God, it's going to burst. I'm going to die. I'm never going to sing again. And they said, well, let's monitor it. So each year, me being on, you know, regional touring, being in bands, singing and screaming for all these years, it never ruptured. As a matter of fact, I did everything that I was told by the doctor. It went away, and I have had clean white vocal cords for going on about 15 years now. And they said, my voice doctor, she's like, well, we're going to have to keep an eye on you and kind of study you because she's like, most people in my genre, it's very weird to come back from once you go into like vocal dysphoma or you hemorrhage or you need surgery. You hear this all the time. And I actually listened to my doctor. Some of them out there aren't wacky and they want you to get better. And I just did what they told me to do. and I've never had an issue since. They wrote an article on me, and every year, they bring me in and check me out and make me scream, and they use my voice on, I guess, my voice teacher said like certain conferences. So it's kind of cool. I like to promote like vocal health awareness because I think once again in our genre it's something that's not talked about, and I think there's kind of like a misconception where it's like you have to blow out your voice, and you're like, no, that's how you'll never sing again. Let's not do that.
The vocal care is extremely important. Even like people don't really think about, even for me, I know I don't scream. I don't, I don't do it as like extreme as what you do, especially on a consistent basis, like for touring. But like, I never really treated, my voice very, very well. I was like, oh, I just show up and talk. It's easy. Until recently, when like earlier this year, I was having really bad, like I was still able to do interviews, but like I was really struggling. So now I was like, okay, I got to really treat my voice because this is what I do. So I have to, protect it and make sure I can do it as long as I can. So like, I'm really taking the steps to try to protect my voice and that I can still do stuff. But I got to buy some apples. So I have to do that tonight. I have to go out and buy some.
And fun fact, talking is actually more strenuous on the voice. Talking and whispering is more strenuous on the voice from what my doctor told me than actual like singing. And I thought that was very interesting.
That is interesting. I didn't know that, but I guess, you talk more than obviously than like you scream or yell or do stuff. So, and it's also like just your natural like voice tone and stuff. So I can see that, especially like whispering, you have to drop your voice. It's deeper. So I can see that.
Yeah, it was weird. I was like, what? They're like, don't whisper. And I'm like, what? Like, do I write on a notepad or? So that's why Berg always makes fun of me because I'm super loud, but I'm actually, when I'm talking, I'm leaning on my diaphragm and, projecting to an extent so my voice doesn't get tired, because on tour and you run into hairy situations where people think you're being shitty because you don't want to talk like an hour before the show, and it's not like I don't want to love you and have conversation, but I'm about to do something very strenuous because I try to explain to people, like, even with what you do and what I do, like, we are vocal athletes. We are, whether you're on radio or, performers, you are a vocal athlete and you have to treat your instrument as such. You know what I mean?
Oh, definitely. And it is, people don't really think about it as an instrument, but it definitely is, even if it's just, part of yourself. But also, it's also your investment of, like, if you want to continue with your band or podcast or whatever, you got to make sure that you're able to sing or yell or talk or anything. It's an investment in you.
Yeah. And it's so funny. Like on tour, I feel like I become like the mom where I'm like, if somebody comes a vocal problem, they'll be like, Z, and I'm like, okay, this is what you need to do. You need to do this, this, and this, and if this doesn't get better, call this person. Because what's cool about my network is, if God forbid something horrific happened, my network, I can find a vocal doctor in every city that could see me, and I will cash in on that or give that to somebody that, I'm on tour with or struggling if they need it. And if sometimes, rock artists don't want to admit that they need help or they're struggling, but it's okay. It doesn't make you weak. I always tell people it makes you smarter, because it's better for you to go and be seen and get looked at than develop like a huge problem. And how many times have we seen it in our industry where artists are in surgery or they lose like some of their range, or, they can't sing anymore, like forever.
Exactly. It helps with the longevity of it. It's almost kind of similar to like wearing earplugs at shows. I know like some people are for it, and I definitely am, because I had tinnitus from concussion, so I obviously want to protect my hearing as much as I can. But also there's some people like, no, you have to not wear earplugs. So it seems like it's kind of polarizing between the people who want to either take care of the body versus people like, we're just going to tough it out and go for it. And to each their own, I guess.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm totally that dork that wears earplugs at shows. Like my shows, going to shows, I always wear earplugs. And I wish Berg could be on this because he could tell you he actually had his inner ear blown out to the point where it affected his walking. So it's not really something that you want to mess around with. You know what I mean? Like I'm not trying to give like everybody the lecture, but unfortunately I tell people all the time, if you need to touch the stove, I guess go touch the stove. You know what I mean? You don't have to listen to me, go touch the stove.
I definitely agree. But yeah, starting off, I didn't always wear earplugs, but then when
Same.
tinnitus sucks. I hated it. So I'm luckily it mostly went away. So now I'm like, as much as I can do, I'm going to protect it as best I can.
I think that's super smart, and you're definitely going to appreciate it when you're in your 50s and 60s, because so many of, like, even my mom's like hard of hearing because she was exposed to loud music when she was young. Not like hard of hearing, but she has trouble sometimes, and she's like, it's all that rock and roll. I'm like, I know, we're the worst.
Always got to blame rock and roll.
Exactly.
Now, I did want to talk about, I was going to go into this earlier, but then we had a very nice conversation about a lot of things. So, but I will go into this now. So obviously the tour with Modern Mimes Down and Dead tour kicks off September 21st. What can people expect? I asked Modern Mimes, that interview will be coming out a little later, but I'll ask you, so what can people expect from the Down and Dead tour?
We have a total rebranding. Like we are getting costumes made for this tour. So with every single that we do, my eye color changes. So if you go back through, I don't know if anybody's that much of a diehard supporter, but like if you go back through the progression of us, each music video, my eye color changes per content or theme. So my eyes are changing once again for our single Cellophane. And we just have a brand new stage show, brand new artwork. Like we are coming out more theatrical. I'm so sorry, Berg. More theatrical, more interaction, just more. So we really just want to give people a show. It was so funny. We did a competition like a year and a half ago, and somebody was taking a pot shot at us, and they said we're in this moment on a budget. And I was like, yeah, actually we kind of are. We are on a budget. So, and I love in this moment, and it's probably very evident, with what I do. And I just want to tell people, I don't want to copy them or, even like emulate to a degree, but I appreciate the path that they've carved, for people who want to kind of dabble into that. So we're kind of becoming more of like in this moment on a budget. Like we're increasing our budget.
I do like that. That's you got to put that on a shirt.
I know. I was telling Berg, I was like, we should totally get in this moment on a budget. And he's like, I don't want to get sued by their camp. And I was like, that's fair. Because, we love them so much, it would make me sad if they sued us.
Yeah, but then, well, at least you can say you got sued by In This Moment.
That is, there is no such thing as bad publicity. I like where your brain's at.
See? No one has sued me yet, even though with some of the stuff some guests have said, I'm surprised like no one has gotten mad at me, even though I would just be like, hey, look, Nick Cage got mad at me or something like that.
And then you can put that on a t-shirt.
See? So
I like it.
I don't, obviously I'm not going to go out of my way to disrespect somebody or anything like that. But if a situation like that came up, I'll be like, well, I'll frame the cease and desist letter or something.
It'll be on my wall of greatness.
Exactly. As soon as I am eventually going to do something with my wall, I have so many frame posters, like signed posters and photos and everything. It's a lot. Like every time I go to a show, someone's like, hey, here's this poster, here's this tour poster. We signed it for you. I'm like, oh, that's awesome. Thank you. I have no room for this, but I'll make room.
You're gonna have to get it on the outside of your house and like start to put them in the panels and stuff, and then that's how you'll go viral because you'll be the guy with the band posters outside on his house built into the house.
I like that idea. That's
Thank
good.
you. I'll
That's
send
good.
you my 10%. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Just kidding.
I've made that joke before. I think last season I did something similar. I gave a band idea and they're like, "Oh, cool, we're gonna use this." I'm like, "Haha, 10% for me, please." But anyway, I still haven't got that, by the way. But anyway, I really look forward. I'll be seeing you guys at the South Bend date. It's like 15 minutes from my house, so of course I'll be there. For anyone, actually, sorry, before I get to that, Modern Minds said they played some shows with you, I believe, on their last run. How was it performing with them?
It was awesome. It's so funny because I actually knew those guys. We played a festival. We played Rise of the Losers, and I think it was 3 or 4 years ago, and that's how we met them. And I went up to them because I always get really excited when I see another female-fronted band, and I know this is kind of like a hot topic for people, but it's always cool. It's cool when you meet cool women who are cool and do what you do, and they kind of like get how things go. So I know I have a really big personality, so I walked up to her and I was like, "Hi." I was like, "You're great." You know? I was like, "We should play together." And I think it didn't scare Ernesto, so I think we're okay. But they were just very sweet, very like compared to us because we're like a very loud camp, but like the very had a lot of like discernment, very like reserved, but in the best way possible. And Ernesto was like, "Yeah, we'll do some stuff," and bands always say that, and I'm like, "Oh well, maybe things just aren't clicking or whatever." And then we found out that they were doing the second leg of the Combi Christ run. I was like, okay, we're starting to intersect more and more. And then when we were moving into MK booking, they were like, "Well, how do you feel about a tour with Modern Mimes?" And I'm like, "I really like them. So this is going to be awesome." And I mean that, like, I'm really enthusiastic. I was like stoked. I was like, yes. And when I met the camp, it was funny because like Ernesto's personality is very similar to like Berg's personality, and his Audie is like, she's very sweet and has like a little bit of a quirk to her, and I feel like I'm like her, like on 100, and we clicked really well, and Justin's like a mirror image of like Eric, our drummer. So I'm just really excited about it. I'm glad this finally got to manifest, and I hope everybody comes out and just enjoys it,
Oh, definitely. I think when I heard the tour announcement a few weeks ago, I was very excited. Obviously, I dig what you guys are doing. I dig what Modern Minds are doing. And I never had the opportunity to see either of you guys live yet. And I'm like, oh, a South Bend date. Oh, that is awesome. Of course I'm going to be there. So I'm very excited. I know it's not till October, but I'm very excited to see you guys live.
I'm so excited to meet you. And then I will know you because I've talked to you for over 40 minutes. And if I don't know you, you have full permission to throw shade at me online. Full permission. Be like, she sucks. She didn't know who I was. Like, I am all about that life because I've talked to you for 40 minutes. So there's no excuse for me this time.
Well, I'm way too nice to do that. So no, it's all right. I can send you a flashcard. Go, here's my face. Here's my name. Please remember me.
Do. Send me actually like full, not to sound weird, like internet land, full body shot the day that you're coming to the show. So then when you show up, I'm like, okay, he's in a black t-shirt with black pants and a baseball cap. And then I'm like, Matthew, hi, how are you?
I might have to do that for bands at shows. But like, hey, here's what I'm wearing. Please, I'll be there. Yeah, I make my presence known. I usually show up early because usually I'm either interviewing somebody or taking photos, video, whatever. So usually I'm there early and like, hey, you're the only person here. And I go, yes, I am. Hi, we've met before.
Well, I love that. And I just want to preface for the record, I'm actually asking him to send me a photo. So there's nothing weird going on. Like, because you know how the internet loves to like be crazy. This is simply for flashcard purposes.
That is a good preference to make. I was talking to a friend of mine a few days ago, and it's like, uh, usually like the stuff I pour like all the effort into when I do my shows, no one really pays attention. But if we something weird like that comes up, that's like what people pay attention to. Is like I put all this work into this nice video, and that's what you take away from it was that weird part right there. Thanks.
I know it's the same thing for me. People are always like, "What's the weirdest thing that has ever happened to you being in a band?" And I'm like, "Hold my beer. How much time do you have?" And then like that's like the one clip that like people they're like, "Really?" And I'm like, "How disgusting and weird do you want to get? Because we can go that route." So I totally feel that. Or I just do something stupid. Like I try to be so eloquent and like poised, and then like I run into walls. Like there's just no hope for me.
Well, you said it, not me.
I did. I mean, it's just fact. It's just funny like when you meet with people and they're like, "Okay, be sexy." And I'm like, I'm trying here. Is this working for you guys? I just can't take myself seriously. I just can't. I'm a horribly awkward human being.
People tell me to act normal, and I go, I thought I was acting normal. And they're like, oh, no, you weren't. I'm like, oh, sorry.
You're like, my bad. Like, and people are like, could you just not be weird? And I'm like, I don't know how to. That's why I
just
love my
can't.
stage persona because she's so frightening and intimidating, and she's everything that I want to be, but I'm not. I'm not. I'm just awkward and weird.
I feel you. I definitely feel it. Like people see me in my videos and like, oh yeah, pretty cool. You're pretty smooth with, whatever. And I'm like, cool. But then they meet me in person. They go, oh, you're slightly awkward at times. Like, oh yeah, it happens.
It's funny because before, like I would always joke because when I like somebody before, obviously, like I got engaged and stuff like that, guys would be like, "Hey, you're this, that," and I'm like, "I like soap," and they're like, "What?" And I'm like, "I'm not smooth. I'm so sorry. Like, I know you had this thing built up in your head, but I'm just not. I'm not that gal."
No, I totally feel you on like being like to me like I feel more confident like doing like interviews and stuff because usually I have what I have prepared either in my head or on my notes or whatever, and then like I'm not very good at like small talk like especially when I meet people at venues and stuff, and like so I'm like how's the weather? It's like slightly cooler than yesterday, pretty nice, and people go, what are you talking about? And I go, I don't know.
Like guy, and it's so funny. Like I'll have guys probably on average 5 to 10 times a week slide into my DMs, and they'll be like, "I noticed that you liked my picture," and I'm like, "I like your dog. You have a dog. I like your dog. So keep that shit up." You know what I mean? Like, you have to kind of like give them a little bit of Jesus just to be like, yeah, I like your pictures, but it's mostly for your animals. Most of the guys on my feed have pets, so sorry. your puppy's really cute. I'm sorry. I like animals more than people. So
That's good.
That's the harsh reality of my life right now.
I don't know how to segue that into my next question, honestly.
It's okay. You just do it. Just do it.
So I was going to get back talking about the tour real quick. I was going to ask, so what is your favorite song to perform live?
Oh God. It changes. Probably we didn't play it on this last tour. I love the song Pray for Her because no, it's super old school. Like it's just a gritty rock song, but it's just so mean. Like it's just mean. I was in a really negative, like hateful, bitter place. And of course, that's where I wrote the best lyrics and like the best burn track. Like I told people, I want people to listen to it and be like, wow, I would not date her ever. So that's probably Pray for Her because it's so mean. Since we're kind of phasing that out, I would probably say like my next favorite song is probably Dysmorphia because Dysmorphia hits very home to me about the music industry in general and just how nasty it is to women and men. Like I never want guys to feel they're excluded from this because they're mean to men in different ways where like you have to look like The Rock. You know.
No, I definitely understand. Their standards are like both that are unfair to, you know, they're different, but they're also unfair to each one as well. So no, I definitely understand what you're saying.
So I think Dysmorphia speaks a lot to me because I have so many women that come up to me and hug me and say like, you know, thank you for writing that. And I'm like, yeah, I get it. I get it. Because if anybody is going to get trolled online, it's going to be me. So I have heard it all. I've had people say it all. So I just figured, you know what? I will just take all of that and put it in a pot and just give birth to Dysmorphia.
No, definitely. I like the backstory and the reasoning behind it as well. And it does connect with a lot of different people because, you know, not only like music, but also like anything, almost entertainment. Honestly, their standards are still there for both men and women. So I definitely I understand it a lot.
Well, and I appreciate that. And I've seen so many of my friends, like including myself, that have like spent thousands of dollars on plastic surgery and eating disorders. And, you know, and it's kind of one of those things online where you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. Like don't ask me why, but I just decided to go on Megan Fox's Instagram. Don't ask me why. I was just having a day. I think because I watched Machine Gun Kelly's documentary, which by the way is actually really good. Whether you like him or not, I just think it was just really interesting. And people were like, "Oh, you're so fake and you don't look like you anymore." But then I'm like, "Okay, people, time out. If she didn't do those things, you would be saying, "Oh, you're so old, you're so out of shape." So like there's no pleasing these trolls and I'm just like, what do you look like? Are you a dumpster fire or like are you Miss America? Like you know what I mean? It's like you can't win.
No, I definitely understand, especially like there's just so much like hatred and the internet itself is almost like toxic. Like obviously there's still good, you know, safe havens on the internet stuff, but I don't know, people like to I don't know, like I don't know if that's like if that's how they genuinely are or if that's just like what they feel like they have to say to people. I don't understand it because I always for me and for Super Cool Radio, it's always about, you know, obviously love, but also like understanding and just being nice to people, like just manners and, you know, being nice. Just something I think just common courtesy for everybody.
I feel like that's such a rare thing nowadays to meet genuine, you know, kind people. And we're almost in a society now where people are kind to you. You're kind of like a dog that's been kicked 10 times. You're like, wait, you're nice. What do you want? You know, you're like,
Oh, I
what
feel
do
you.
you want? And I even find myself feeling that way when people are genuinely nice to me or they just want to like help. And I'm like, okay, how much money do you want? What do you want? Like, and it's just such a messed up way of thinking. But I think unfortunately society and the internet has conditioned us to think that way, you know?
Oh, definitely. And it's a shame. You know, like to me, the internet can be a really great place, but also it can be very toxic at the same time. And I definitely I feel you so much when like someone's nice to me, unless it's someone like I've worked with and I've known and you know that stuff, then like, you know, I'm cool with that. But someone just out of the blue nice to me, I go, all right, hold on. What's the catch here? You want me to do something, right? So unfortunately you have to think like that because unfortunately I've had and probably with you as well, there's so many people like they're nice to you and then like, hey, can you do this for me? And I go, there it is. So
Yeah, it's weird, like the perception once again of social media. I'll never forget this comment where this guy was like, "Must be nice living in your mansion in LA." And I'm like, "What are you talking about, bro?" Like I just took a picture. I was like, "I'm with my mom. We're in a Subaru going to Aldi's." So like it's not that serious. Like I am the first person to not take myself seriously. I'm the total opposite of my stage persona. I think that's why I love her so much because she's everything I wish I could be.
it's very interesting, like way people like perceive other people. Like people think because I have my podcast and stuff that I'm rolling in money. Shocker, I'm not. It's just like that kind of stuff. So, yeah.
They're like, "Oh, well, you're in a touring band, so like you can afford." I'm like, homie, homie, homie. Allow me to introduce you to debt.
Oh yeah.
You know, they'll be like, "Oh, well, I saw you with your Balenciagas on your Instagram story." I'm like, "That's cute. That was a gift from Santa Claus, bought on Poshmark." Like once again, not that would, and that's see, and that's where I hate the internet is because people just assume and they think they know and they don't. I truly feel like 9 out of 10 times things can be squashed with a conversation.
Oh yeah, or they like the way they perceive you, like either like on stage or like through your music, that they know everything about you, and then they meet you and go, "Hey, wait a minute, you're not at all how I perceived you." And it's like, well, you could have had a conversation with me first, and you could have figured it out. So there's that. I think that's like people just see what they see online, and as we already talked about before, about what we think about on online, and the way the perception is. Most of the time, it's not actually reality.
It's not. I think the biggest thing that kind of hurts my soul, but also is complimentary. People are always like, "You're so nice." What do people think I am online? Like it makes me like rethink. Like, am I not nice online? Like I try not to like engage in negativity, but I kind of just do my own thing. But that kind of like breaks my heart in the way they're always like, "I met you and like you were so nice," and I'm like, did something happen that I didn't know about? So yeah, that's kind of the thing that sucks sometimes. Is I get that a lot. People are like, "You're so nice."
the the thing I always get, and then obviously when I meet you at the show, you probably make a little bit more sense, is that like people only see me most of the time this much of me. So like I'm 6'1", so like people like when they meet me in person, yeah, they go, "Oh, you're so tall," and I'm like, do I put off short person vibes? Like that's always what I think when people tell me that.
Well, if I hug you, I'll probably come to your waist because I'm 5'2". So that's going to be quite a photo.
Might be a little. Well, I'm pretty good about either. I do a lot of crouching or I just sit down. Is what I've been doing, especially if it's a height difference that much. The hardest part, if I try to do interviews with people and the height difference is quite
Oh,
a bit,
yeah.
especially like in-person interviews. That's a lot of work to try to make sure it all looks good and we all look sort of. I always feel like I look like a giant next to some people because kind of am to some people. So I always try to figure that out when I do like in-person interviews. Like I don't want to look so big, but yet I am.
Well, I'm glad that we're doing it this way because we would definitely have that problem, you know.
Yeah, that's why I try if I do in-person interviews and I see there's a height difference, I try to like, okay, there's a couch here or there's a table here. Let's just sit down because then no one can tell.
See, I have the opposite problem. People think I'm tall, and then when they meet me, I feel like I disappoint them because they're like, "I thought you were like 5'10". I'm like, No, sorry, I'm 5'2".
But see, it's your persona and the attitude. That's why that's what I tell people. Like if they presume someone's taller, someone's like says it's their persona makes them look taller than what they are. Or if you're on stage, it's sometimes hard to tell, like get the perception of how tall people are, especially
I
only
just
through
tell,
photos.
well, I just tell people I have a Napoleon complex, and I just have to shout really loud. Otherwise, people will just like go right over my head. So I just have to yell a lot to pay attention to me.
I like that. I like that. All right, so Obviously, so we're approaching the hour mark. I didn't expect
Okay.
to go this long, but
Yeah.
we're having a really great conversation. So I'm going to be wrapping this up, but I do got one more question.
Sure.
A slightly hard question, but I like asking this because I'm the
Do it.
host. What has been your favorite moment from Reign of Z so far?
I will never forget this moment, and I will try to keep it brief. When we opened up for September Morning in Pittsburgh, I was getting ready to sing Dysmorphia, and I felt these little arms come around my waist, and this girl had to be 8 years old, and she just hugged me before I went on stage, and it was the sweetest moment. And we actually grabbed a photo of that, and it just broke my heart into 1,000 pieces, like in a good way. It was like the Grinch, where like my heart grew like 6 inches that day. I'll never forget that. That reminded me why I do what I do.
That is a really awesome moment to have that connection with that person, and that's just awesome. Like that warmed my heart just hearing it.
Yeah. It almost made me cry, but then I had to like tell myself, "You're evil. You're evil." It's like those memes on Facebook, because I was like, and to think like somebody so young is already going through that, which is like even more heartbreaking. But I had to like suck all the emotion down and be like, "You're evil. You hate everybody." But it's like, you know,
You got to balance it out.
I do for sure.
But that's a really awesome moment. Thank you for sharing. That's actually a really great way to wrap up. I do. So if anyone's interested, where can they find Reign of Z online?
ReighnofZ.com, Reign of Z official on Instagram, Facebook.com/ReighnofZ. We have Twitter, but we really don't engage in it. But we also have a link tree. Honestly, if you just put us in the Google search engine, we will pop up.
Great way to describe it. But thank you so much, Z, for hanging out with me here live Super Cool Radio. Hope everyone enjoyed watching live here on Facebook and Twitter. Z, it was a phenomenal time chatting with you.
You too. I cannot wait to meet you in person and feel tiny.
Yes, we have that to look forward to. But for Z of Reign of Z, I'm your host as always, Matthew Thomas. Thank you so much for watching live Super Cool Radio. And remember, stay frosty.